Hi, my name's Liam Fassam. Just welcome to you to this very short clip on supply chain risks. This is to set a bit of context in terms of our next session together, and the session will run over the next 2 weeks. What we're going to talk about in session 1 and 2 is we're going to concentrate on global supply chain risk and put a bit of contextualization behind exactly what is a risk and what constitutes business failure, how you make things more resilient. When I say things, I'm talking about business, supply chains, actors, nodes. All these things we'll go over in a few weeks, so don't worry too much about the terminology. And if there's anything you don't understand, please do give me a shout. What you see on the screen in front of you is a global map of some of the top risks by some of the key countries in the region. This was created by Allianz. It's their risk register for 2016. There'll be a link on the VLE Nile site for you to peruse. And again, like I say, I need you to read through that. I'll set the context at the end of this video. What we can see is in different countries we have different risks. So over here in the US, business interruption is one of the greatest risks. In the US is the top one. Market developments is a rising risk, and theft, fraud and corruption is rising in the region as well. I find business interruption a little bit too generic, and I'll come on to that shortly. But what is interesting is a market development, so something changes in the market. So that might be a new type of smartphone, a different type of food, a new kind of technology, a different type of transportation. Something has come along and it's created a risk in the market. One of the best examples of that is Uber. Uber has innovated this new model which has rocked the transportation world. And that's a market development. It's a risk to bus companies, train companies, taxi companies, and they don't like it. Theft, fraud and corruption, my favourite subject, is rising in the US. But if we move on to other areas, so just up the road, just over the border here in Canada, you see the top instance there is cyber incidents. Quite often with cyber incidents, we think about getting hacked or somebody stealing our credit card details. Cyber incidents actually go beyond that. And in a supply chain context, it quite often means that we've had an issue with the ICT or the information technology systems that support business. And inside a supply chain, as we'll talk in the classroom, the key thing about it is data integration and communication. That falls down quite often. So if web servers go down or somebody incorrectly specifies the IT system to support a business, somebody puts in incorrect data, that all counts as a cyber incident. So don't feel that all incidents to do with cyber are potentially somebody hacking into a system. Natural catastrophes and macroeconomic developments are on the rise in Canada. There's not really much you can say about those. Natural catastrophes you cannot really mitigate against. You can look at where you put your factory or your business partner or your supplier, and you can look in the region and do some forecasting based on historic data on what is the risk, and there's always a trade-off with that. Hopping across the pond to good old United Kingdom. Unlike Canada, cyber incidents are the top, and so I'm not going to go into that. Changes in legislation and regulation. Well, that's an interesting one given where the UK is at the moment in terms of the Brexit, and that I would imagine would continue rising and would become the top risk in years to come. And new technologies is a big risk to the UK, so the development or the enhancement or the embracement of technology is a risk to business. Staying in Europe, we'll do France and Germany together. They're co-located, but they have completely opposing risks. Loss of reputational brand value in France versus market developments in Germany. Rising are market developments in France, so it's following a trend in Germany, new technologies in Germany, political risks in France. We've all seen the far right and left parties fighting with each other. There's also a potential of France wanting to leave the European Union as well. So again, like the UK, political instabilities. Russia, changes in legislation and regulation, like the UK. but it's the top one in Russia. Business interruption is a big one, so that's on the rise in Russia. It's number one in the US, so we can start to see some global trends and patterns starting. Coming down to China, market developments, well, it's such a fast-moving, developing region that it is going to suffer quite badly from the disruption that comes with the market development. So one of the great things to look at in China is the manufacturing. It started off manufacturing fairly recently compared to the rest of the world. The technologies deployed weren't great, so there's a huge investment going on at the present to bring those technologies up to a more sustainable and environmentally and economically beneficial standard, which is placing massive strain on the economic viability of the region. Business interruption and cyber instances are quite high in China. The cyber instances there actually are usually due to somebody hacking into a system. That is the norm. We have a lot of high-tech companies there, and IP is key in the region. So that's a top view of cyber risk around the world. But if we take an aggregate view, so we can see there, but different countries, different meanings, different risks. So if you were going to put a business into Canada, it's different risk to that of the UK or to Germany, although there's currently some themes starting to develop. Right, remove all the squiggles, and what we have here is the consolidated risk barometer. And what you can see here are the top 20, risks for the global risk barometer. So we can see business interruption is the top one. Again, I'm not a huge fan of this, but what you can see is last year it was 46%, this year it's 38%. That, to me, making an assumption now, always document the assumptions, tells me that reporting has got better. It doesn't mean to say we've got less business interruptions. What it means is that we've better understood what the interruption is, and we've put it into one of these characteristics here, or elements. So the number decreasing doesn't mean there's less interruption, it just means we're reporting it better. We can start to go down them here. We've got lots of them when we go into micro. Although some of these weren't the top in the world, they're still quite high. So fire and explosion didn't actually factor as one of the top in the regions, but it is quite high here. So fire and explosion actually comes in at 16% of risk. Against last year, it's actually dropped or decreased. So that's actually, it's a good thing. Changes in legislation and regulation up here, we can see that's starting to become a challenge in terms of, it was 18% of the risk last year, 24% this year, so on and so forth. I don't want to dwell too much on this, but what I'd like for you to do is I'd like you to take a look at this aggregate list, and I'd like you to come to class next week, and I'd like you to pick out 3 of these risks, and I'd like you to contextualize those against something that you know has happened in the business sphere. It might be some kind of cyber incident that you've seen in the Financial Times. There may be, we all saw innovative technologies with driverless cars, but there was a crash a couple of weeks ago, one of the Google driverless cars. Anything you want. So I just want you to pick 3 risks, and I want you to identify 3 challenges in the current live business sphere. Bring those to class. We're going to debate those. It's key that you do this because this is going to link into assignment 1, which will be the following week. Okay, so I wish you a good remainder of the week. I look forward to seeing you next week. And if you have any more questions in the meantime, please do not hesitate to contact me. All the best.